Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Global Book Network, the show where we sit with authors from all walks of life and really pare down what makes their works special. My name is Hobo Boys, and well, we are in for a treat because my guest is an educator and a lover of life as well. Please welcome the author of Grace, Stories of Kolkata and Its People, Dr. Suchitra Samanta, to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Flavor.
The pleasure is all mine. It is such a good thing to sit with another author and ask them what gives them so much joy. To be able to talk about Grace today is an honor.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be able to talk about my book.
So let's get into brass tacks. When you talk about Grace, what was the inspiration? How did this book come together?
All right. I would probably need a few days to answer your question, but I'll keep it to a couple of minutes, right?
Have you got time?
Um,
Yeah.
um, Flavor, my book, well, it's based in Kolkata, the city of millions in eastern India, once the British capital of the country, right? Um, but for me, it is a city with four generations of family history, a lot of memories, a lot of memories. My parents went to school there. I went to school there. My daughter was born there and went to the first elementary school there before I came to the United States. So much of my life has been spent there. My grandparents left what is now Bangladesh and came when they lost their land and home at partition and independence. They came there. So, as I said, there's generations of family history. That's one part of my answer to your question.
Sure.
The second part is that, and it's related to the first, which is it's a city I simply love,
Okay.
right? It's a noisy, crowded, messy city, often very dirty, and yet it's a city with a heart, you
Mhm.
know, which means its people have a heart. And those are the people, some of them only in seven short stories that I write about in my book. And in so many words, um, my book is a tribute. It's a tribute to the city that I love, and it's a tribute to the people that I met, I knew. These are fictionalized versions of their lives, um, but ultimately it is a tribute.
Mhm. Well, a lot to unpack there. When you came into the area from the area which is now Bangladesh, was that a city that spoke to your family first as a place to stop? Because there was many options, right? Like on the way over there. What about Kolkata back then, or its former name back then, which made people go, "This is where we want to set up camp."
Well, it's again complicated history, Flobo, but
I
in brief,
understand. I understand.
in
Yeah.
brief, as India approached independence, which was 1947
Hmm.
from the British, and it was partitioned off into Pakistan and India, and what is now Bangladesh. It was East Pakistan before. So I have never been to Bangladesh, but my grandparents, that's where they live. And they had a home and farmland. They weren't wealthy, but they were all right. And so, as basically Muslim and Hindu fell on each other at that period of time, my Hindu family left their home and farm and land and everything and came across to what is now India, right? So they moved into three dark rooms in the ground floor of a house. And that is where my many cousins, and I basically would go visit my grandparents. And long story short, again, this very large extended family, my father had many siblings, and they lost their family, well, wealth, if you like, with their home and land. It was a family that pulled for each other and basically came to stand on its feet and then gave my generation a leg up.
Sure.
So there's a lot there that resonates for me.
Yeah, thank you much for explaining that. I didn't realize the timelines jutted up
Yeah,
against partition.
yeah.
But let's talk about the city itself. You said it's big, it's beautiful, it's messy, it's not perfect, but you love it so much. What was a moment in your life when you said, "I decided to make a tribute to this town," and with your short stories? Was it like a particular moment, or was it a love that grew gradually over time?
It's over time and space level. Because when I came to the United States, um, and I started thinking about what I would do for my dissertation, and I decided I would go back to Kolkata and write about its patron deity. This is the goddess Kali. And if you've seen pictures of her, she is on the surface very frightening to look at. She is dark, her hair is loose, she carries a sword, all of that, right? But she is fascinating. She's kind of like the city, right? And
Right.
so I did my research on her. I met with her devotees. I walked around the streets of southern Calcutta, Kolkata. It used to be called Calcutta. That's the
Mhm.
British. So I walked around. I met with all her people who basically, were her worshippers, right? And just ordinary folks. And again, um, when I returned back to the United States, and I was writing this up, and this had to be for a university, so it was an analytical piece and theoretical and all of that. And what I felt was that analysis and all of that is very well in academia, but I could not really tell the real lives of the real people that I met within an academic format.
Yeah.
So I wanted to write stories where I could express the many dimensions of our humanity, the complexities of us as human beings. And that's really, where I started writing these stories.
From the outside looking in, I have never had the pleasure of visiting India wholesale. What are some things that maybe that we will learn if we pick up a copy of Grace, like that things we haven't really considered that permeates through that town when it comes to the people and how they interact with each other?
Um, Global, there is actually a lot to unpack in these stories.
Mhm.
And they are stories. They talk about some particular incident in a person or person's lives, right? It is fictional, but it is based on people that I knew, on experiences I had or I observed, right? Um, you could on the one hand, I think you could pick up a lot on the simply the culture. Kolkata is a very diverse place in terms of religious diversity, of the people who live in this enormous city of millions, right? In terms of class differences, right? There is immense wealth on the one hand and dreadful poverty on the many slums, dreadful poverty on the other, right? So I write about all of that in different ways in the different stories, class differences. There's one, for example, that I talk about, and this people often don't know this, but um, we differentiate between shades of brown,
Mhm.
right?
Right, right.
Shades of brown. So one story talks about a young American girl who goes back to visit her grandmother in Kolkata. She's growing up here, and she comes up, she's faced color racism over here. She's brown herself. And then she goes and finds it's there as well, right? There's
Yeah.
brown and there's darker brown. And, and it's often distinguished also by class. So as a young American, she takes a stand. That's kind of, in a nutshell, that story.
Yeah. I love that one, and that's what I want to talk to in particular because I was some friends out a couple weeks ago, and I was talking about how colorism kind of permeates through different cultures, right? Doesn't matter if you're or I'm from the West Indies myself, the West Indies myself, and that does exist too in Latin America as well. And that to me spoke to me the most because it is kind of relative. At the same time, if you're in a space long enough, it becomes part of your identity, and it really opened my eyes having someone go from one space to the other, and the color meter got reset.
Oh yeah, so this is based on a true story, but basically this young woman was kind of shocked when her grandparents said, "Oh, you're too dark." Now she'd been rollerblading here, so she was tan the dark brown, right?
Right.
Um, but she was offended by what she saw. She saw the discrimination between the poorer woman, the domestic that in that story, um, you know, and it was a learning experience for as I say in the story, as I said, it's based on a real experience of a real person. but it is. So it's very much there. Colorism, as you call it. It's very
Yeah.
much there. Something else, I've had people who've read these stories, blah, blah, also
Mhm.
talk about the foods. Right? People love the many kinds of foods. And Bengali cuisine is rich. And we joke often that when Bengalis meet, no matter how many degrees they have and their professors and whatnot, we end up talking about food.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there's
it's
lots.
funny how food and music brings us together no matter where you're from, you know?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
really nice thing. To break bread with other people is always nice.
yeah, that's right. I think that, one of the things that I also wanted people to understand um, is how in most of the stories, not all, but various deities, Hindu deities for the most part, they kind of weave in and out. You know, these are not religious stories or anything like that. I did not set out to send a message of any sort. They are fiction, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I took a group of American students on a study abroad to Kolkata in 2012. And that was one of the first things that these young women commented on, that religion is all around us. We are walking along the curb, for example, and there is a daub of red, vermilion red powder somewhere that denotes a holy space.
Mhm.
There's a mosque here, a temple here, a church there, and not far away from each other, which they said is not how it works in America.
Yeah.
You know, so you'd find that or you have found that in these stories, gods, goddesses, I mean, they kind of weave in and out. The first story is set in the vicinity of this major temple to the goddess Kali, who gives the city her name.
Yeah.
Um, and there and if you've read it or if you haven't, I'll just to give you an idea. That's the story Grace.
Mhm.
And you have a beggar, so a mendicant, who begs in the vicinity of this temple because there are thousands of pilgrims who come there on especially festive days, and he has a, well, not a decent income, but at least he makes something,
Right.
right? And his kind of sort of friendship with a prostitute, because there is in fact a large brothel in about a half a mile away from this temple, right? And she is a Hindu. And between the two of them, they debate whether Allah will grant him grace. In her case, whether Kali will grant her grace. And,
Oh.
both have very difficult lives. They are poor. And in this mix, there is also a refugee from Bangladesh who offers, especially the mendicant, a place to sleep when it's raining, when it's very, very hot outside. So it's about three people who live on the margins of society. And somewhere in there, they find the time to be kind to each other. And that's what I understood as grace.
So I always am a bit curious when it comes to short story collections, especially ones with unifying theme. And this one is about Kolkata. Was it a situation where these are things that you saw and you said, I want to exemplify this in stories, or did the characters that were inspired by the town were invented first, and then you drew stories around them?
Um, I think the people, this is what I meant when I said that this is of a tribute. It's a tribute to the city where these lives are set, right? These different lives, these different stories are set. It's also a tribute to the people. Not all of them are nice necessarily, right?
Right.
But it's also a tribute to the people, and they are people to a greater or lesser extent that I did meet and I came to know. And I made a fictional story out of, their personalities, their characters, right? I don't know. Does that answer your question or?
Because sometimes, okay, so I'm from Brooklyn. That's my
Mhm,
hometown, and
mhm.
Brooklyn is very much like Kolkata, and that it is big, it is messy, and it raises you a certain way. And if it worked for you, you'll love it, but it doesn't work for everyone,
Yeah.
right? And so when I had a chance to do short stories based on New York, I always have like two schools of thought. It's like, here are lessons I learned, here are some fables I learned. Let me be a vessel for characters to go through this. Or we said, hey, look, Joe Schmo, the character in my brain would be from this neighborhood. Let me give this person a story. So I had kind of like a dealing of both. I was just kind of curious how your approach was.
Okay, I again, I wrote from what I know, right? From what I know. Certainly, one of the things that again, a theme that comes up in some of these stories is the class difference, right? Here are people who are middle class, sometimes upper middle class, and they have their air conditioned homes and all of that. Um, and the people who serve them, so the domestic help, for example, who do live in effectively the slums.
Hmm.
They live in one room, and my other research that I did besides the goddess was actually walking through the slums in southern Calcutta and on girls and education and what it took for a very destitute, in this case, Muslim girl to get an education in a country that constitutionally gives her the right to have one. But she doesn't. But she doesn't for all kinds of reasons, such as poverty, such as bias, and so on. You know, so I saw that world personally of the slums. I went into their rooms, I talked to people. And of course, I belonged to that middle class, that upper middle class professional. And I saw that life as well. And I wanted to point out the difference. I also want to say there can be kindness and compassion on all sides. It's not just, bad, good, right?
Right. And so I guess the research element, was that labor intensive? Did it take months, years to get those stories told or written down?
The research incentive for my first research, which was on the goddess, again, it took effectively on in the field about 9 months, 8 months, and then a postdoc for another 3 months. So that was 1 year. But on the girls and education in the slums, I did that over 4 or 5 summers,
Wow.
2 months each time. Yeah.
Yeah, that is something we don't talk about enough is to make sure things ring true, the work that we put in as authors to really do that. So I commend you. So many authors don't do that as much. But
Well,
I'll throw a little shade. So if someone were to pick up, if a fan were to pick up a copy of Grace today, what do you expect them to extract from the stories within and overall from the book?
well, for the from some few people who have read earlier versions of the stories, I was encouraged because what they said to me, quite apart from the foods and the gods and all of that, right, um, is that somewhere, and these were Americans who were speaking with me, they felt that they could connect simply on the basis of a shared humanity, of kindness, suffering, loss, death, abuse, right? They're all there. And loneliness, aging. A number of stories deal with the parents we left behind when we came to the United States and how hard that has, it was for me. My father was in Kolkata. I have others who are in that same situation. And we are responsible for our parents, of course. And, you know, that's a hard situation to find. So some of the stories deal with that loneliness, the insecurity of the parent left behind. Um, and so Americans would say to me that on many fronts, simply on the basis of the shared humanity, we felt we could connect.
Yeah. And that to me was like one of the best things about this because yes, on the surface, it's a city that for where I stand now is 6,000 miles away from my home. And yes, the food will be different, the layout of the city will be different, but trying to do right by your family, trying to be a good person, those things are kind of universal, which is kind of like a cool balance of seeing things that we keep seeing as exotic and domestic at the same time. I'm sure you had those feelings making that happen in this book. I mean, it must have been kind of cool to see reactions from people as they told you they felt when they were reading through the pages.
I was very encouraged when people said that, that yeah, it was cool to read about foods and gods and whatnot, right? But at the heart of it, we felt, they said to me, we felt that we could connect simply as human beings.
And connection is so paramount. I want to thank you so much for being on Global Book Network today. This is the book, Grace, Stories of Kolkata and Its People. It's available now, but if someone wanted to check it out or connect with you or learn more about you and your story, like much like I did in advance of this talk today, how they go about doing that?
Um, my email is in the on the first page or the front page of the book, Flovo, should they want to write to me. So I think that would be probably the best.
Yeah. And of course, pick up a copy of the book so you have access to that email. That's the thing we want to do as well. But
Yeah.
I would say from the bottom of my heart, learning about cultures is always fun. Learning about history is fun, but when it's in a way where you can identify with the protagonist and even the antagonist in the book, to me, made it all worthwhile. So I want to thank you for educating me of a culture of a city that I probably may not have looked at that same way. And thanks for sharing your story here with me today.
Thank you very much, Flovo. I appreciate your thoughts, your comments, your insights. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to stop the stream, but don't leave me. Don't.